Let's take a look at Eli Lilly today, a pharmaceutical company that's been doing very well in the past couple of years due to the GLP-1 drug craze that's been happening. Ozempic, Wegovy, things like this. Let's do some technical analysis and see where the stock might now be headed. So I was previously using these kind of highs here as a potential level to sell out of Lilly when I was trading this stock a couple of months earlier. You have rejected from that level around $1,100 on Eli Lilly, and you are now coming back down. My instinct here tells me to align the low here on this parallel channel to understand where price may next be headed, and that would be a further 22% move down to perhaps $700 for Eli Lilly now. Whether or not you can find support there is another question, but that would be my first hope for a bounce on this particular chart, would be down at the bottom of this parallel channel. Beyond that, we do have pretty strong support around $625. So that may be a decent level for a bounce. You often with these parallel channels will actually break down because at this point, a lot of people will be aware of the potential of this pattern playing out. So you might have something along these lines. You then eventually come down, and then maybe you use this as a bouncing point to get a bit of a retest before heading potentially lower. That's a pattern that often happens with parallel channels. We might also look down here around $450 as a potential longer-term buying opportunity for Eli Lilly. That would be a 50% decline from here, which would be massive. So take that prediction with a grain of salt, but you do have a gap here that should at some point be filled. So I would imagine the stock price will eventually retest these levels and maybe bounce from there and go higher. In terms of how the trend is looking on this particular name, we are currently in a bullish regime, but you've had a sell signal, and I think you're most likely to be flipping into a bearish regime pretty soon, and that would give you the impulse to take you down to the bottom of the parallel channel and maybe even lower depending on how bad things get for the stock market overall and for the company, specifically Eli Lilly. If they start to experience a decline in their earnings or something like this, then you could see further downside and break this parallel channel to the downside. Taking a look at Eli Lilly over the S&P, you can see here that we've moved out of the sort of parallel channel that the stock was previously trading in and have made new highs. So the next move on this particular ratio I would expect would be coming back down at some point to retest this ratio's sort of parallel channel, get some kind of a normalization for this particular stock, and that would be a further 40% decline compared to the S&P. So that is a very possible situation that I could see happening, and it warrants being a little bit careful on Eli Lilly. Another very interesting chart here, Eli Lilly over MRK, another health provider. Merck, also a stock that's been doing fairly well recently, but not quite as well as Eli Lilly. That would suggest you do have to come back down to some more normal levels on this particular ratio. You did break out massively to the upside, and depending on how we want to draw this particular parallel, perhaps something like this, then we might say that coming back down to these levels compared to Merck as well, you may have a little bit of underperformance there of quite a considerable amount compared to an alternative healthcare name. Just because you've had such a parabolic move up on Lilly, you get this kind of repricing which occurs, and if you are then re-rated down on the stock due to valuation compression or earnings concerns or the market selling off more broadly, then these kind of parabolic moves can fade back in. That being said, you might be setting a new normal in some way, and from that level you do continue sort of higher on these particular ratios. You may sort of come down eventually and then still be trading in this sort of region. Apologize for the scuffed drawing, but perhaps you do go up eventually into the future. So not necessarily a long-term bearish outlook. You have had this massive parabolic move. It looks to me like a top is in place on these ratios that we've just looked at. So I would be expecting further downside, and that would be in fitting on how this particular chart looks with the potential bearish regime coming. Another stock that looks to be experiencing some weakness, as I've already said in previous videos. Same with the S&P and the market more generally. So really, it's more the exception than the rule having a stock actually go up in this environment, things like oil stocks and stuff like that. But thank you very much for watching. I hope the video was helpful. Subscribe as always for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.